Palestine is burning alive. We have the money, the audacity, the time to celebrate Halloween. This is a Muslim ummah that people say, don't speak about this. One drop of Muslim blood in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more precious than his house. Don't ever think that Allah is ghafil, unaware of what oppressors do. Fear that day whereby you all return back to Allah. No one will be oppressed. So don't think this land of Palestine is some trivial land. This is the land of the prophets, the land of the messengers. There's not one handspan except that you find that either a prophet or angel has prayed inside that location. After praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending immense greetings and salutations upon the final Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, we find a simple message that we mentioned previously about ahmiyatul Qur'an, the importance of the Qur'an, and reading the Qur'an and pondering over the Qur'an. Because amongst the downfalls of many of us average Muslims today is we very rarely read the Qur'an. When we do, we can't even engage with the Qur'an, or we can't understand the Qur'an. And when we do understand it, we understand it something far away from what the Qur'an is telling us and depicting for us. Because the doom and the depiction of what we see at the moment is nothing but the visualization of the Qur'an itself. That's why many ulama, they write about what is known as taswir al-fanni fil Qur'an, the depiction, a visualization inside the Qur'an, whether it be the doomsday that we see, that the gloom at the moment, the hardships at the moment, the Qur'an depicts that. It gives you this visualization to show you what's going to take place. And even the build-up prior to that, if we understood the Qur'an, that the opening verses, Surah Al-Baqarah, that it speaks about, the first few verses speaks about the believers. The next one or two verses speaks about the disbelievers. Then a whole passage, a page or so, 12 ayat or so, يخاطب المنافقين, speaks about the hypocrites. Quite strange it is that the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should begin to speak about hypocrites. Thus we find a general principle inside works of ulum al-Qur'an, al-ibra bi-umum al-lafzi la bi-khusus al-sabab. The lesson is taken from the generality of the words and not from the specifics of revelation. كأن القرآن يشير أن يكون في بين أيديكم وفي هذه الأمة يكون المنافقين. That amongst, unfortunately, inside this ummah, there's going to be individuals, there's going to be full of hypocrisy. Whether that hypocrisy be of a low level of hypocrisy, which all of us are exposed to that, or the greater element of hypocrisy, which will be visualized as well, unfortunately. And it speaks about all the makr, the plots and the planning and the treachery all throughout Surah Al-Baqarah. And then it begins to then make establishment inside Surah Ali Imran, that now it's no longer that when people believe in this concept that we're living in a Meccan phase. The journey now, read Surah Ali Imran. Read the verses inside there. Read these verses. The depiction was taking place with the Prophet ﷺ and the people around him. The trials, the tribulations, the afflictions. And like this, the beginning, As-Sabr Tiwal, the whole first 7 surahs, that's all that they're speaking about. All until you find Surah Tawbah. Once again, exposing those individuals who claim that they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and their treachery. And if we come to Surah Al-Hajj, the 22nd chapter of the Qur'an, it describes, gives us this depiction of the last day. Ya ayyuhan nasu ittaqu rabbakum inna zalzalata as-sa'ati shay'un 'azim. O mankind, fear your Lord, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Indeed, the earthquake that will come on the final days, or some ulama mention the earthquakes that will come prior to that, shay'un 'azim, is something grave or severe. Yawma tarawna tadhalu kullu murda'atin amma arda'at. When you see every breastfeeding woman leaving her child, stop suckling her child, it's a depiction. Which mother leaves her child at that moment in time, at that moment? Which mother will leave her child? And likewise you find وَتَدَعُ كُلُّ ذَاتٍ حَمْلٍ حَمْلَهَا, and you find that a pregnant woman will drop her load. Depiction of the last day, calamity, destruction. وَتَرَى النَّاسَ سُكَارَى وَمَا هُمْ بِسُكَارَى وَلَكِنَّ عَذَابَ اللَّهِ شَدِيدٌ. You're going to see people in a state of drunkenness, lost, disorientated, don't know where to go. But they're not drunk. It's the punishment of Allah that's come, that's hit them. There's calamity. They don't know where to go, where to escape. Ayn al-mafar. Where's the escape? Where's the escape inside this dunya? Where's the escape for us Muslims? Where's the escape for non-Muslims? No one can escape from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one should think that inside their lives, that I'm ever going to be escaped from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or these individuals ever escape. وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ غَافِلًا عَمَّا يَعْمَلُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Don't ever think that Allah is ghafil, unaware of what oppressors do. Don't ever think that. That's aqeedah of a believer. Stem that inside your heart. وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. These are few days we alternate between you and them. How long will we live for? How long will they live for? 60 years? 70 years? 80 years? 90 years? Then what? What will happen then? What will happen is what Allah warns us when He makes this khitab, Ya ayyuhan nas. There are certain places inside the Qur'an, Allah speaks to the whole of humanity. That's why I began with the Qur'an. Preach the Qur'an, speak the Qur'an, read the Qur'an. Give the Qur'an to these people. Let them read the Qur'an, what the Qur'an says. Ya ayyuhan nas, O mankind. The first commandment inside the Qur'an, inside Surah Al-Baqarah verse 21. Ya ayyuhan nas, u'budu rabbakum. Allah gives a khitab to the whole of humanity. Worship your Lord. Alladhi khalaqakum. وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. He created you and those people before you. يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ اُعْبُدُوا اللَّهِ. خطاب لجميع الناس. Worship only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why there's places inside the Quran Allah speaks to humanity. When Allah mentioned وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا عَلَى بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ وَرَزَقْنَاهُمْ مِنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. We gave nobility, rank to the children of Adam. Allah mentioned inside the Quran وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. We said amongst every people, every nation, every tribe, every society, we said a messenger. One call, أن اعبدوا الله, worship only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَقَدْ وَصَّيْنَا الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ وَإِيَّاكُمْ أَنِ اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ. We gave the legacy, the advice to the people, to you and the people that came before you. One advice to the people of the book and everybody else. Fear only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the beginning of Surah Al-Hajj. That we think this will be a surah speaking about the journey of Hajj. Yes, it does at a later stage. But this is how it begins. To remind us this is Yawmul Jam', the day of gathering, the day of Yawmul Hashr. Just like you see those millions of people that are there in that disheveled state. All of them there standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's how Yawmul Qiyamah will be. That's how the day of judgment will be. That everyone will be there standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we find in Allah, then mentions and ittaqu rabbakum, fear your Lord. As if the whole message of the Quran is consciousness, fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what the Quran it concludes. That's why the Quran is unique. The final verse of the Quran inside Surah Al-Baqarah 281, verse 281. What is that final verse of the Quran sent down to the Prophet ﷺ? He only lived for 9 days after this verse was sent down. وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ ثُمَّ تُوَفَّى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَا كَسَبَتْ وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ. Fear that day whereby you all return back to Allah. No one will be oppressed. لَا ظُلْمَ الْيَوْمِ. There's no oppression upon anyone when you come in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And everyone we brought forth to accountability what we carried out on this earth. This is the final verse inside the Quran. This is the final verse inside the Quran sent down. Look at the siyaq, the context of this verse. Prior to speaking about riba, about dunya, about loans, about debt. Because why this Muslim ummah is continuously sleeping. That's why Allah needs to remind us, awaken us again and again. Awaken us. What are we doing in the face of this earth? أولا يرون أنهم يفتنون في كل عام مرة أو مرتين ثم لا يتوبون ولا هم يذكرون. Don't you see we test you once or twice in a year? For what purpose? To awaken us, to make us repent, to make us turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why these mihan, these trials, these tribulations, they come. Because we're the ones that are sleeping. We're the ones that are dead. We're sleeping. They're not dead, these individuals. They're living. They're living, these individuals are. They're living with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're alive. Don't classify individuals who've died in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala amwata. Bal ahya'un inda rabbihim yurzaqoon. Don't think people who died in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as dead individuals. They're living with Allah. Allah's providing them and taking care of those individuals. We're the dead individuals. We're dead individuals. We see this on a daily basis now. And some people with a shallow mindset, we shouldn't spread this to show the world. It's a world of media. Da'wah is every form of da'wah that you're exposed to, that you deliver it to society to show people. This is what's really taking place on the face of the earth. Don't cocoon yourself. Shut yourself away. Doesn't concern me. It now concerns every single Muslim. It now concerns every single Muslim. In our lifespan, what did we see? We saw the Falkland Wars in the early 80s. We saw the Iraq War. We saw the first invasion of the Gulf War in 1990s that we find. Then the second invasion. Then the Iraq War. Then the Afghanistan War. All these wars in the last 50 years, we visualized them. We might think they're ba'id, they're far away. Today's on our doorstep. Today's on our doorstep. And still some people, they trivialize it. Don't they have some fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inside their hearts? What's taking place around us? Then Allah gives this reminder that indeed this zalzalat as-sa'a, the shaking of the hour. The whole Qur'an is about al-akhirah. Al-haqa, al-ghashiyah, al-qari'ah. All these surahs inside the Quran, the 29 to 30 of juz, it's all depiction of the last day. It's all depiction of the last day to awaken all of us to return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَتَرَى النَّاسَ السُّكَارَى. And you see people in a state of drunkenness, as we mentioned, drunkenness of this dunya. And likewise, the topic at hand, we speak about drunkenness, the physical drunkenness that we find. Some people may think that, what is the point in speaking about this ma'asi, these dhunub? As we mentioned previously, that these sins are leading to our weakness. Ignore them. Don't worry about Palestine and the sins that they may commit, that some people like to tweet out in the world. That look at them, what they are. There's not a time to speak about that. That shows the person doesn't ma indu aql, ma indu fahm fi deen. That shows the person doesn't have an intellect, doesn't know what the Sharia is. That to pick a bone with those people to speak about them. Let's speak about ourselves. That what are we doing inside our lives? What have we done towards this? That's we find in the hadith that we find when people begin to fail to make mention about the last day or about ad-Dajjal. That we find in the hadith that people حَتَّى تَذْهَلُ النَّاسِ عَنْ ذِكْرِهِ. When people fail to speak about the last day, about ad-Dajjal, we become comfortable with this world. And the hadith, it continues. They're not just the mainstream people, but even the ai*imma, al-manabir, even the imams fail to speak about the last day, about Dajjal. This will bring about the coming of the Dajjal. Hadith, Al-Haytham in his works of Majma' al-Zawaid has authenticated, likewise the late Sheikh of Sham, Sheikh Nasiruddin al-Albani, rahmatullah alayh, who wrote a whole risala based upon this one hadith. Qissatul Masih, the story of Masih alayhi salam, the coming down, return of Masih alayhi salam. He said the second reason why I wrote this book is because people are not speaking about the last day. People are not speaking about the return of Dajjal. Because we're so doomed inside the world, we think it's so far away from us, the last day won't come. As you find that certain countries, we don't want to put them name to shame, but it's crystal clear. Muslim countries celebrating Halloween a few days ago. A few days ago, celebrating Halloween. Muslim country, showing it to the world. And what is Halloween? It's not even something which is bid'ah, shirkiyat, pure shirk. It's sacrifice, living of the dead people, worship of the dead people. This is our Muslim ummah that people say, don't speak about this. It's right live in front of our eyes. Palestine is burning alive. Children are being whatever it may be taking place upon them. We have the money, the audacity, the time to celebrate Halloween and then say, well, don't talk about this. We're not deaf, dumb, blind individuals. We don't bow down to no man inside our life. We had to bow down to one man inside our life. That's not even our parents. Only one man a man would bow down if he was allowed, would be the Prophet ﷺ. That's the only one man a man should ever bow down if they had to inside their life. Apart from that, everybody. Ya'khudh wa yarud. All human beings. All human beings. Don't overpraise human beings. Don't praise people around you inside the world. They'll come and go. Praise those people who lived to the truth, who died upon the truth. That's the Prophet ﷺ. That's our qudwa example of how he strove, what he sacrificed for his life and his companions to where we are today, and what we're doing with his sunnah and his teachings of the Prophet ﷺ. So we find that we begin to make lack of dhikr, of remembrance of Ad-Dajjal and the exit of Dajjal. And the sins that we commit inside our lives, that it's all there, passive, tacit approval of all of us Muslims. That we're living these sins and we don't even think that sometimes these are sins that have an impact upon us, an impact upon the people around us. As we mentioned, the basis of the sin, as we mentioned, the verses at Surah Al-Ma'idah, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, innama al-khamru wal-maysir wal-ansabu. Indeed, that you find that this drink of alcohol, and you find gambling, and you find that the sacrificing in the altars, and the throwing of the divine arrows, all this is what rizqum min amal ash-shaytan fajtanibuhu la'allakum tuflihun, is a filthy handiwork of the devil. إنما يريد الشيطان أن يوقع بينكم العداوة والبغضاء في الخمر والميسر ويصدكم عن ذكر الله وعن الصلاة فهل أنتم منتهون. What does this lead to? These intoxications take you away from salah, take you away from dhikr of Allah, create enmity, hatred, animosity amongst your own selves. That's why Aisha, our mother, she mentions at Bukhari that she mentioned that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the verses straight away inside the Qur'an, stay away from these sins, stay away from shurb al-khamr, most of the people wouldn't abandon it. But there was a gradual build-up of iman of those individuals. When finally these verses came, they're able to abstain from it. Remember, we speak about the sins that we live in on a daily basis. I don't drink it. I serve it and I sell it. And I can list you for all the fully licensed restaurants that we have inside our community. Whether you want to go to Brick Lane or you want to go to Edgware Road. I've counted them. These are Muslims. And even to look on a global level, as people say this is all some other internal motive or interest that we have. To serve alcohol. Maybe 2 or 3 airlines don't serve alcohol. Apart from that, every single Muslim airline serves alcohol. Every single Muslim country serves alcohol. And when they try to say this is a license for non-Muslims, read what fuqaha have mentioned about this. Read what fuqaha have mentioned. That this person by default is legalizing alcohol. يَسْتَحِلُّونَهُ. They're giving a license to sell alcohol, whether it's to non-Muslims, whoever it may be, in a compound, in an area. This is on the brink of kufr. This is a brink of disbelief, because who gives you the right to legislate? There's no discussion of welfare or some form of benefit for the people or for the Muslims or for the Ummah. That shows how shallow our Islamic interpretation is and the life that we live. When folk have a deep discussion of people who are making it halal, you are making it halal by giving them the license to sell this inside our lands that we find. Hadith inside Sahih Muslim. لا يكونن من أمتي. There's going to be from my ummah أقوام يستحلون الحرى والحرير والخمر والمعازف. There's going to come from my people, from this ummah, يستحلون. حتى هذه الكلمة, just this word يستحلون is an evidence in itself that ulama have discussed about it. Because originally haram. There's going to come people who are going to make things which are haram, try to make them halal. And the strange thing about this hadith, it mentions zina, it mentions silk, it mentions alcohol, and it mentions music. All these things is today what this world is. Wherever you find alcohol, you'll find music. Where you find music, you'll find zina, you'll find haram, all put together. All prophecies of the Prophet ﷺ that we find. And they try to call it al-mashrubat al-ruhaniyya, spiritual drinks. We even have contention when people say this is a non-alcoholic beverage. Why have you designed the bottle like a champagne bottle? Why have you designed it like a champagne bottle? Why have you designed it in that manner? Even if it's a non-alcoholic drink. Why? Why are you imitating these individuals? Why are you imitating them? Why do you feel that we have some default reason to imitate these people inside their lives? Why? Why do we think that glory is with these people and what they do inside their lives? When we have the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salam in front of us, Iman and Khamr can't come together. And a more authentic story that we find that's been collected by Ibn Kathir inside al-Bidayah wa Nihaya. As we mentioned the lines of poetry Abu Mihjan al-Thaqafi. This is now his story. At a later stage, like Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani in al-Isaba fi Tamyiz al-Sahaba. In some 15 odd volumes that we find. By the way, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, Asqalan is balad fi Palestine, is an area inside Palestine. So don't think this land of Palestine is some trivial land that some of us may think. This is the land of the prophets, the land of the messengers. There's not one handspan except that you find that either a prophet or angel has prayed inside that location. This is the land of Awwal Qibla, first direction of prayer that we find for the Muslims. And some even mention the first building that was built even before the Kaaba. This is the land of ulama that we find is what this land is. So when people say this land is some downtrodden land, despised land, has no value or anything, it didn't create anything, go back and read history. Ibn Hajar Asqalani is one of the most outstanding scholars to this day in what he wrote, what he left behind his Turath. And in his works he compiles and speaks about this story. It was known as Ma'arakatul Qadisiyyah in the year 636 of the Islamic Hijri calendar. This great battle that took place where Amir al-Mu'min al-Khattab, he's a leader of the Muslims. And the other side that we find that Yazdarid III, the leader of the Persians, his great empire. al-Khattab places Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas to be the general of the army. King Yazid places Rustam, Farkhzad, to place him as to be the leader of his army. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas goes into the battlefield. But before he goes there, he meets Abu Mihjan al-Thaqafi. Remember the one who wrote the lines of poetry about drunkenness. He's a companion. He smells alcohol upon him. He's drunk. He says to him, you can't participate. Just like we say to that Muslims, the level we all need to be pure Muslims, good Muslims. Muslims are good. They have a zeal inside their heart, inside their mind that sometimes goes beyond us so-called religious people. He stops him. He says, you can't participate. You're addicted to alcohol. So he ties him up and leaves him and he goes. Abu Mihjan al-Thaqafi, he narrates, he mentioned, when I heard the sounds of the horses, the fighting, I began to itch inside my mind that what am I doing? What am I doing that I'm not participating inside this battle of Qadisiyyah? So he says to Salma, the wife of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, he says to her, look, just let me go. Just let me go and I promise you I'll return back. I'll come back and I'll place myself inside these fetters, these chains. I'll put myself back inside here. So she has some compassion towards him. She undoes his chains, unlocks him. He jumps on Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas' horse called Balqa. He jumps on the horse and he rides. He enters the battlefield in a state of losing. He enters the battlefield and everyone begins to visualize this individual fighting this man, and Sa'd ibn Waqqas says to his comrades, that looks like my horse. That looks like Abu Mihjan al-Thaqafi, but I locked him up at home. The way he fights, his ferociousness, his strength, his power, his courage. He's not a coward. He returns back and he places himself in the shackles once again. Sa'd ibn Waqqas returns back home and he narrates, says to his wife, I saw something strange today. If only I hadn't left my horse Balqa at home and tied up this individual, I would have thought my horse was there. I would have thought that Abu Mihjan al-Thaqafi was there fighting with us. That his victory was being given to us. She then discloses that I released him. I released him so he could go to fight. He said, "Qum fa wallahi la ajluka fil khamri abada." Sa'd ibn Abu Waqqas says, "Get up, I'm not going to punish you anymore for your addiction towards alcohol." Abu Mihjan yaqulu ana wallahi la ashrabuha abada. Abu Mihjan said, "I'm going to give it up in my life now. I'm not going to drink ever again inside my life." So all this that we see inside the world, that for us are normal Muslims, what can we do inside our lives? Is give up our sins, give up our disobedience, turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to strengthen us, strengthen these individuals, the hardships, the calamities, the difficulties they're going through inside their lives. For that fortifying us, that's what they're doing. As we mentioned previously, the last straw is Baytul Maqdis. Masjid al-Aqsa is the last symbol. Imagine this just for a moment in time. Imagine if today, if people try to attack Kaaba, the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Baytullah subhanahu wa ta'ala, people try to attack that Kaaba, what would happen? What would happen in the Muslim world today? Every Muslim would rise, would they not rise? And you know something, Islamically, the blood, one drop of a Muslim's blood is more precious than the Kaaba to be taken down brick by brick. One drop of Muslim blood in the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more precious than his house. That you dismantle it brick by brick, live in front of the world, it means nothing in the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One drop of blood is more precious. Every life is precious. Those children that we see every single day, we're all visualizing. We are living in history today. Mark my words, we're all part of history. We're all part of history today. That we're written down in history that either you took a stance or you never took a stance. It'll be written down. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give all those individuals patience and strength, and given that due reward inside al-akhirah given to them, give us strength and ability to remain steadfast upon the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.